Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome to Thursday Tea Time History Chat Live. How are you? It's been a couple of weeks where I've not been here, where I was supposed to be doing jury service. It's a bit of anyway, got messed around. But I'm very glad to be back. I will be back here this week and next week, and then I am on tour. So it's more likely to be a spontaneous live the following week if I get a chance to do it. But I will let you know more about that as we get closer. Hi, welcome everyone as you're joining. Welcome if you are watching live on Instagram, on YouTube, or indeed if you are listening back afterwards on the podcast or catching up on the on Instagram or YouTube. I hope you are well. I hope you didn't miss me too much the last 2 weeks. I've got a lot to tell you about that I did manage to fit in when I wasn't seeing you. So if you want to say hi, pop a comment below. You can send me a heart if you're on Instagram and a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. That'd be greatly appreciated. Hopefully on YouTube you can actually see me clearer now because I have a new camera. So hopefully, hi Lisa. Lisa's double decking me, aren't you? I can see you watching on both. Hi Doug, hi Ibsa. Hi Sarah, hope you are well. Seeing Sarah in 2 weeks time when I'm taking the tour group for the Anne Boleyn tour to Hampton Court Palace, and Sarah is showing us around, so can't wait for that. Good morning, Jenna. How are you doing? Your dog is ridiculously cute. Amazing. My dog has a cone on his head and has had for about a month because he managed to run into another dog's mouth. The other dog had very little to do with it, but it made quite a bit of damage, unfortunately. So the poor thing is still with a cone on his head, but hopefully be off soon. Yes, looking forward to seeing you too, Sarah. So hi, I hope you're all well. So like I say, I'll be here this week, I'll be here next week, but then I will be on tour. And in fact, that will be on the Thursday, I'll be at the Tower of London with the group. That's the 19th of May. It is the Anne Boleyn tour, and we're at the Tower of London on the anniversary, of course, of the execution of Anne Boleyn. Actually, it's not only just me who's going to be. I'm there working, but there's also Cat Marchant's going to be there. Catherine Brooks is going to be there. So that will be fun. So look out, because I probably will do a spontaneous live. But obviously I'm there working. And Indita, hi, how are you? I hope you're well in India. Lisa made a comment on Instagram live last night. Suggested. Okay, I see. It got removed. A 4-letter word beginning with a K. Okay, they must have been very sensitive last night. I'll tell you about what we were doing last night. It's funny. You can go back and have a look if you like the History After Dark segment that I do with Cat Marchant and Catherine Brooks. Then that is live on Instagram on the history.after.dark profile. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about how events were unfolding in 1536. This is on the run-up, of course, to Anne Boleyn's execution at the Tower of London. I see. Lisa, I get it. So it wasn't a swear word, but it was, yeah. So last night on History After Dark, we were doing, what's the polite way of saying it? Kiss, marry, avoid. But it descended, didn't it? Because we were talking about some quite interesting characters. Hi, my journalist. How are you doing? Probably one of my last Thursday lives you can attend for a while. New job. Well, it's not depressing. Well, it's not depressing you've got a new job. Hopefully your new job goes very, very well. But it will be sad not to be able to see you here live. But maybe you can grab the catch up and we'll still see you on a Wednesday night for History After Dark. So we'll be talking about the run up to Anne Boleyn's execution. It was the anniversary of the Battle of Tewkesbury yesterday, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And I have been on my travels. Yeah, Lisa, you're such a bad influence. And Indita has been making videos on history focusing on international relations, because of course you've got your own channel, haven't you? Remind me of the name of your channel. Good morning, Rusty in Santa Fe. Right. Yeah. My car, I wanted a Santa Fe car. It's got nothing to do with the place, but it was a nice car, but it's a bit big. It's a bit too expensive. Jenna, Instagram was being sensitive last night. She had her comment deleted. Oh dear. We need to be careful. We didn't realize this was going to happen. Oh, honestly. Sense of humor failure by Instagram last night. Oh dear. You can't really incite violence against someone who died 400, 500 years ago, can you? And we were being funny. Oh, well, there you go. That's what you get for pushing the boundaries of how to discuss history, clearly. Yes, I have been on my travels. So I will tell you a little bit about my trip to Hever Castle. I also got in a trip to Chartwell and to a Tudor house, which isn't very far away from me, which I'd never been to before. Where are we? Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on the comments. Yes, don't miss your history after dark. Lottie Rose got her comment taken off as well. Oh goodness. Well, what can we say? Cutting edge. That's what I'm going to take it as. I'm taking it as a positive. So yeah, so my little Tudor discovery, and let's start off with yeah. Well, hopefully, so Insta can't censor for this one. Unless it's getting incredibly sensitive to moustaches. Did anybody see my? I'm going to show it to Instagram, YouTube first. The post I did about the teacup, and I hadn't seen one of these before. Oh, Rusty's coming over and is going to go to Hever at Hampton Court. Rusty should have been on one of my tours. Maybe next time. I'll let you know a bit about what's coming up actually. So yeah, so the teacups. So this was at that that Tudor house that I said I discovered. I haven't discovered it, clearly. They knew it was there, but it's been in the hands of the National Trust for only about the last 8 years. So it's been lived in until just over 8 years ago. It's called Brockhampton, and it's actually a medieval house. I've put some photographs on I did a reel which is on Instagram, and it has a moat, so it's another moated manor house, a bit like Harvington Hall. And the owners created or had the gatehouse built in sympathy with the style of the house in Tudor times. So it is a Tudor gatehouse. And if you're a member of my Patreon, then over on Patreon, all levels have got access to some photographs, extra images, if you like, that I've taken from inside the gatehouse and from inside the house. And there's going to be a virtual tour of the house in Patreon over the next few months, within the next few months. But inside the gatehouse, so you can the gatehouse actually is almost like I suppose it is a bridge over the moat. And yeah, you can go up and into the top, into the top floor, unless they've got a infestation of, what do they call them, swarm flies or something like that. Maybe that, like, it sounded like they were saying it was a species of fly, but either way, there wasn't any when I was there, so I was quite pleased about that. And the ducks had ducklings on the moat, so that's what's on the reel. But yeah, any of my patrons, or if you want to be a Patreon, remember you can come into Patreon from £5 a month, and all these bonus images that you get of places I've been to, of which now, of course, I'm getting to go to a lot more than sort of last year. You get these little bonuses. But yeah, so you can go inside the top of the gatehouse, and then the house they had set out through the ages. So it went right back to sort of the medieval times. So the Great Hall is still there. And I'm going to be covering Brockhampton on Visiting Tudor Britain tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I'll be hosting that, so you can get to that on my Instagram channel. And I need to do a bit more research, but there appears to be a link, familial wise anyway, to the gunpowder plotters. because we were in the similar sort of part of the country to where everyone was sort of hiding out and planning and whatever. So I will be covering that tomorrow in Visiting Tudor Britain, so you can learn a bit more about that. But it was amazing. It was only half an hour away from my home, so I did it in one afternoon. And you just find somewhere that's quite close. I found it quite delightful. But it's there that I saw this Mustache Cup, of which lots of you had seen before, which I was very pleased to hear. I hadn't seen one before. So if you can see, for any of you who haven't seen it before, so you've got this just normal china cup, and then this extra rim on the inside, beautifully painted and decorated as well, for a Victorian gentleman's moustache to rest against, so that it doesn't make contact with the hot liquid and melt his wax. So he's carefully coiffured his moustache, and that prevents it from apparently from ruining it. I wasn't sure whether I hadn't seen very many of those, because I imagine the rim was quite annoying to wash, and I'm just thinking it would have made it delicate, and it could have sort of broken off quite often. But so many of you had seen one before that I'm wondering whether actually it's just coincidence that I hadn't seen one before. But yeah, so that little teacup was at Brockhampton, because, like I say, each room had been set out in a different era. The Great Hall, as I said, that's the reason I picked up that there's a link to the gunpowder plotters, because they have a shield. It was not called a shield, actually. I'll find out the correct term for it's like a tablet, but it basically looks like a shield, and it's of the family who ended up getting linked with the gunpowder plot. But the Great Hall still looks very medieval, so it's really atmospheric. So they had people to wash it. Yes, I know, but it just looks like it would be delicate, like you'd be like, oops, you know. Imagine it's years later and this stupid Tash teacup still makes me howl with laughter. It's just too ridiculous and useless for words. Victorians for you, though. Well, they were very inventive. Let's give them some credit. They were a very inventive time. People were trying stuff out, and we got some quite amusing inventions. Oh, bring back the Tash. Bring back the Tash. Bring back the Tash cup. The most poignant room, though, so the Great Hall, I would say, was the most atmospheric, especially for people, like us, who like that medieval Tudor period. So you can really sort of immerse yourself in it. But the rest of the house, so that it goes right up to, actually it doesn't go up to completely modern day, because we're probably not that interested in that, are we? But there was a family living there in the First World War, and their only son. So you go into his bedroom, and their only son, who went off to fight, and he died in the First World War. So that was incredibly poignant. His I don't think it's his uniform. Maybe it was. I doubt it. But a uniform, much like that he would have worn. And you're in his room, and you know that he didn't ever come back, and he was their only son. Oh, and he's like 19 or something, I think. So it's that was incredibly poignant. But the house itself is beautiful, and like I say, it's it tells the story of the house through time. And then you go outside, and there's a Norman chapel. It's just got its own ruined chapel outside, which I was like, okay, cool, just keeps going. So that's in Herefordshire. So it's like pear country. This is like, so there's orchards all the way around as well. And like I say, I'll talk more about this in Visiting Tudor Britain tomorrow. But if you do get to go, if you're in the country and you do get to go, don't be put off by how long the drive is. It's incredibly long. Like, I thought I would taken a wrong turn long. So don't be put off. Keep going. Follow your nose. And if Ryan Smith is in here, slow, because the sheep don't like driving fast or loud. Take one of your quiet cars. Right. So what else was I going to cover? That was my little Tudor discovery this week. I've also been down to Hever Castle because I am there on the 16th with my first tour group for 3 years. Very, very happy to be getting going on that again. We're doing the Anne Boleyn tour. So, and the amount of finite detail involved in organising these things is quite incredible. So I was there actually. So yeah, sorting all that out. So again, if I don't know if you saw my I only put it on my story if you saw my story from that day, but my little lunch area overlooking the castle, that was pretty cool. Hello, Amra, how are you? Yeah, so we'll get on to what was happening in the events of 1536. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Tara and to Susan, who are my latest Patreon members. Thank you, Lottie Rose. She's reminding me what I was going to talk about. Yeah. Because I know I do go off on a tangent sometimes. Yeah, I'll get back to that. But yeah, I just want to say a quick shout out to Tara, who has joined on the royalty tier, and to Susan, who has joined as an upper class patron. So you have access actually to the blog that everyone does who's on Patreon, the monthly blog, which I have just released today, and that is looking at Arthur Tudor's tomb at Worcester Cathedral. In fact, it's the chantry. So you have his marble chest tomb, and the chantry around it, if I can get the word out, was built a couple of years after his death. And I haven't put it in the blog, but what's amusing, if you look at the photos, I've got a post about it a couple of days ago on Instagram, is it had to be cut down to fit in the arch. So yeah, so you've sort of got bits cut off the top, but it is absolutely covered in badges and heraldry, because of course this is Henry VII, another opportunity for Henry VII, not one he would have relished, of course, but to tell the story, to show that lineage and therefore the legitimacy of the Tudor line. So it's absolutely covered in Tudor iconography, and that is what the blog is on today. So if you are a patron, or if you want to be a Patreon, then you can go over there and join up, and you'll have access to that, and you have access to everything from the last. You have access to everything that's been in the library as well. It's 12 months exclusive. Lottie, I actually didn't know what Patreon was, but I need to do that. Yeah, so Patreon is basically it's like a membership. So it's like a club. So I have the British History Patreon club, where we have more history. For those who can't get enough, I do virtual tours in there, extended historian interviews, and you get to ask, actually, when I do interview a historian, you get to ask your own questions. So it's fun. I will post again on my story what's coming up, so you can see, actually, because that would help you know if it's for you or not. Okay, Battle of Tewkesbury. Let's do that quickly, because that was the anniversary of the Battle of Tewkesbury was yesterday, 4th of May, 1471. I spoke about Tewkesbury, didn't I, a few weeks ago? Oh, I was there. I did a live there when I went and had a walk around the battlefield. And when you get to do a battlefield walk, it just brings home just what area a battle could cover. I don't think Tewkesbury was particularly big, actually, in terms of the amount of ground covered. And you can walk through the field where Henry VII had his encampment. Henry VII, not yet. That's wrong decade. Sorry. Where the was it where the York? No, it was where the Lancastrian army though had their encampment. And you go around as well, and you walk, and there's a golf course now. So imagine how open this field is, rolling fields actually. But that was a really thick forest where the Yorkist army, they went in to have a look if the Lancastrians were hiding. They weren't, so they hid there, and it was one of the ways that they got the better of the Lancastrian army, who of course weren't really ready. So Margaret of Anjou is leading the Lancastrian army. Her husband Henry VI is already incarcerated in the Tower of London. She has with her her son, the heir to Henry VI, Edward, Prince of Wales. So this is, I think this is his first battle. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody out there. I think this is the first battle that he's involved in up front proper. But they were actually trying to make their way to Wales. This is why they were at Tewkesbury. They were trying to get to a part of the River Severn that they could cross over into Wales and get more support. The Yorkist brothers caught up with them, and this is why we have the battle at Tewkesbury. And it's an interesting, interesting, if you like this sort of thing, area, because it floods quite often as well. And there is little tributaries for rivers going through on the edge of, well, by the cathedral, but on the edge of another battlefield area, which is now known as Bloody Field, because of how many men were caught up there and slaughtered. But crucially, they either during the battle or soon after the battle, Edward, Prince of Wales, dies. Edward is the only child of Henry VI. And so with his death, really, there is another battle, the Battle of Barnet 2 weeks later, but really this is so decisive because it cuts off the hereditary line of the House of Lancaster. Henry VI is in the Tower. So they have Henry VI, so the Yorkists have Henry VI incarcerated. They've killed his only heir. And I mean, Margaret Anjou has got nothing left to fight for. Her son's died, which is just very hard to even comprehend. And her husband is a prisoner. So she's incarcerated. She's taken back to London. And of course, 21st of May, Henry VI dies, supposedly of a broken heart, on hearing that his son had died. Not likely. I mean, maybe, but more likely that he was put to death by Edward IV and his brothers, either directly or on their orders. Lottie Rose, I feel like it was such a mistake bringing Edward to the battlefield at 7. Yeah, so he was 17 years old, wasn't he? When all the hopes rested on him. Yeah, it's a weird. It sort of doesn't make sense. Yeah, Jenna, Edward offed him. Edward IV did off him, didn't he? There's no way. And they actually have a ceremony to Henry VI at the Tower every year, because he was killed in the chapel there, the small chapel that you go into if you go through the medieval palace. Yeah, where the the heir and whoever, they prove themselves in battle, but of course they're also so all of the Lancastrian hopes are on this 17-year-old boy. He is the heir, and he's killed. So he was buried at Tewkesbury Abbey. He's buried in the choir, and above him is Edward IV's Sons in Splendour badge, which he had put there after the battle, to commemorate their victory. Lottie Rose, they did Henry VI so dirty. Yeah, he's my favourite historical figure of all time for many reasons. He's oh, good morning, Colleen. How are you? Watching on YouTube. How you doing in California? Bet you got better weather than we have. Henry VI. Yeah, he founded many schools, didn't he? He founded Eton, which is close by to Windsor Castle. as you might have heard me whinge about this before, but as a school for the poor, and actually many of our top expensive schools are started off as sort of foundation schools, charity schools, if you like, that were set up for the poor. Christchurch is another one. Of course, Eton now there's absolutely nowhere you can go there unless you are incredibly rich. But he set that up. So yeah, it's he and Edward, I feel, is totally maligned. He's got to 17, and all we sort of hear about him at the point of his death, I think, generally. He goes to the Battle of Tewkesbury and he dies. and with him all hopes for the Lancastrian line. So it's it's interesting. Oh, Lottie All Souls, is that another one at Oxford? And Kings came, yeah. It's a bit of a bugbear of mine, because it's just it can't even be it can't be more away from why they were set up. What can I say? So the anniversary, so the Battle of Tewkesbury. So there you go. So that was yesterday. And if you haven't seen my little video from walking around the battlefield, check it out if you fancy it. And I think I shared a picture from, I did yesterday, of the brass plaque that's in the choir at Tewkesbury, which commemorates Edward's burial there. So of course, the other big events in May, there's a lot, but that I generally focus on is the downfall of Anne Boleyn. Now, if you want to check out more, I have a video, or I've got a series of videos, there's 4, I think, which tracks the downfall of Anne Boleyn, sort of day by day. Lottie Rose, book recommendation, The Shadow King by Lauren Johnson. No, I haven't yet. My book list is ridiculous. I have another one to show you. Has anyone read this one? So this is another one that I've got new. I'm actually reading about William Marshall at the moment, which some of you will be very happy to know because you want me to do something about William Marshall. But this is linked to, well, you can see Bess of Hardwick, who I'm fascinated by, Kate Hubbard's book Devices and Desires. So that is something I will be delving into. Don't know if any of you have read that, but that's going to be one of my next reads when I've finished reading about William Marshall, who you may remember when I went to Chepstow Castle. There's links there. That's in fact where I bought the book. So at the moment, so what were we? 5th of May. So actually, I mean, I'm just looking at this. I'm reading off my script, actually. So if you do want to have a look at my video, then it may seem very familiar after this. Lisa's on to reading about Anna of Cleves, Heather's book, I presume, and has just finished reading Crown and Sceptre, which is Tracy Borman's book, which is also brilliant. Can't wait. Got Tracy Borman coming to speak to us on the tour. I'm going to keep mentioning it in 2 weeks. We've actually got Jonathan Foyle, who I lose words over. He's just lovely. And Gareth Russell, of course, my lovely, whose birthday is today, by the way. If any of you follow Gareth Russell on Instagram, drop him a birthday message because it's his birthday and his mum's birthday, which I thought was pretty cool. So he's with us all the time, and Tracy Borman also is speaking to the group. Oh, so yeah. 5th of May. Let me tell you what's happening on the 5th of May in 1536, because of course it's not just Anne Boleyn who suffers in 1536. It is the men who went down with her. Lottie Rose, sorry, the name of the book that I held up is Devices and Desires by Kate Hubbard, and it's about Bess of Hardwick and the building of Elizabethan England, because of course she was such a prolific builder. Jenna's got a book about Bessie Blount she's about to dive into. I wonder if it's actually possible to read all the books that I have on my shelf, let alone that are out there. Possibly not. So yeah, so obviously Anne, she was arrested. Oh, that's another order. I've got lots of things on order. I'm always very excited when the door goes at the moment. Ready for the tour, believe it or not. So we've got Anne was arrested at Greenwich. She had no idea before that point. That was just, I think that's the 29th of April. She's arrested. She's brought to the Tower. And Mark Smeaton was the first one to be arrested and taken to Cromwell's house in London. But by the 5th of May, we've had more and more arrests. Because, of course, what they're trying to do is blacken Anne's name so much that no one in their right mind is going to stick up for her. They're going to make it such a her crimes so abhorrent and so widespread that it's clear Henry must get rid of her, that she'd never been a real wife, and etc., and all this rubbish. Does anyone actually out there still believe that Anne Boleyn was guilty? Just putting it out there. So right, we get to the 5th of May, and Thomas Wyatt, the poet, who actually doesn't lose his head, he is arrested, and Richard Page. So Richard Page, who's a gentleman of the Privy Council, are arrested. They're both arrested and taken to the Tower. So now you have a total of 7 men in the Tower, all caught up with the accusations of adultery and treason that they're trying to put onto Anne Boleyn. So you had Mark Smeaton, who'd been arrested on the 30th of April. He got moved to the Tower on the 1st because, like I say, he'd got taken initially for the first 24 hours of his captivity, and he was interrogated by Thomas Cromwell at his own house. So, hi Tringums, how are you doing? Oh, you're down in Portsmouth near the Mary Rose. So yes, you've got Mark Smeaton in there. So Henry Norris, who was, of course, Henry's groom of the stool, one of his closest friends. Very, odd choice. George Boleyn, Lord Rochford, who was Anne's brother. I mean, another level of adding in. The idea is to give it to make it disgusting. It's not just adultery; it's incest as well. Jenna says she was too strong of a personality for Henry to handle. Basically, she gave him a run for his money, and he didn't. And he did what was necessary to get rid of the problem. If you haven't already seen the interview that I did with Gareth Russell about the downfalls of Anne and Catherine Howard, so Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, do go and watch that, because it's incredibly insightful when you see the difference, and it's clear. It's clear to me, Anne is planned and Catherine is not. And there's so much evidence for that by looking at what the difference is in how they were treated and how events unfolded. So yeah, by the 5th of May, you've got Mark Smeaton, who was a musician, in the Tower. You got Sir Henry Norris, Henry's groom of the stool, George Boleyn, Anne's brother, Sir Francis Weston, who was actually a favourite at court of both Anne and Henry, and a good friend of George Boleyn. Sir William Brereton, who seemed to be a bit of an odd arrest because he wasn't part of Anne's circle, and of course she was being accused of adultery, so these people had access to her. Lottie Rose says there's a documentary where modern day lawyers take her trial to bits and explain every way in which it was unfair against her and the magnitude of how ridiculous it was. And of course, as well, at this time, you were guilty until you could prove yourself innocent. They didn't tell her what charges were going to be laid against her until she was in court. So there was no preparation. And this is sort of par for the course at this time. Lottie Rose says, so sorry for her being a young mum. yeah, she must have been so scared for Elizabeth. It's indescribable. I don't know. I mean, you know, when you have kids and you, I don't know, get health scares and things like that generally happen. I don't think generally, this is my experience, you're worried for yourself. You are worried and distraught at the thought of leaving your child. And so for Anne, with a 2-year-old daughter, just, you know, that's just, it blows my mind. It's just incredibly sad. So you got William Brereton, Sir Thomas Wyatt, and Sir Richard Page. So 7 men in total who were in the Tower by the 5th of May. So I think that's worth noting that Henry wasn't just going to get rid of his wife. In order to get rid of his wife, he's getting rid of some of his closest, and up till now, friends and so closest servants, friends, people who've been loyal to him and served him faithfully, and he's willing to sacrifice them as well. Of course, the other story that's running parallel to this is his, I was going to say wooing, but I think that had already been done, of Jane Seymour. At the same time that Anne's household is getting demolished. What is it? Same time as her household is getting give me the word, someone. Taken apart. It's not the word. Jane is getting installed in Chelsea with the King's cook, and you know, so this is running parallel. Henry obviously didn't think about how Elizabeth would feel towards him after murdering her mother, Lisa says. Yeah, and I think disassembled, thank you. Yeah, broken, disbanded. Thank you, everybody. I knew it began with a D, and that's perfect. Some perfect, two perfect solutions there. I don't think Henry thought about that at all. I think Henry just, I doubt he cared. I think he's so blinkered, so selfish, for want of a better word. Yeah. Jenna says, that's one thing I'd like to say to Henry. You grew up without a mother. Think about that before you do that to your children. Yeah, I mean, he was 11 when Elizabeth of York died, and he was distraught. He was, you know, he's of an age where he was very well aware of his mother, if you know what I mean. You know, younger children, maybe Elizabeth wasn't quite so aware of her own mother, but yeah, you'd have thought he would have more understanding. But of course, he'd already done it to Mary, not kill Catherine of Aragon, but take her away from court and didn't allow them to see each other. He is just the ultimate selfish, tyrannical narcissist. So I think that's worth thinking about, though. The fact that he was willing to for all these close friends and confidants to also go down with it. So there was another man who was questioned as well. He wasn't arrested. That's Sir Francis Bryan, apparently also known as the Vicar of Hell for his impiety. He had already started to align himself with the pro-Seymour faction. People had the feel for how things were going to move, or some did. And it's possible that his summons to London and his questioning was more about sort of pretending, having a veneer of fairness, of, you know, than really there was, because he was released. Well, he wasn't arrested. Barbara said he had to have such charges to justify what he was doing, and so that people would sympathise with him. Yeah, the idea was completely to make sure that people were disgusted with Anne, that they couldn't possibly. You do get this now, by the way. If you see people being character assassinated, the the things that are levied against them can be designed so that for you to stick up for that person, even if there's no evidence that they are what they're being said to be, if you stick up for that person, then it can look like you are saying that whatever they're being accused of is okay. You know, it works. This psychology works. Chewing gums. Henry is one of the most selfish people in history. Indeed he is. Indeed he is. Unfortunately, he's not on his own, but yeah. So that's where we were at on the 5th of May. So it's today in 1536. Lottie Rose, the founding of the Church of England catapulted his God complex to the moon. He most certainly, it's really interesting. Yeah. You know, how much did he believe that he was that God was talking through him? How much did he use that as a way of getting his own way? And Lottie says, and he knew if he could get away with doing what he could get away with doing anything. Well, indeed, he could get away with doing anything, couldn't he? And yet there are other kings in history who, although they did get away with things for a time, they didn't really get away with it for the entirety of their reigns. You know, at some point it was shut down. They were shut down. But that didn't happen with Henry, which is I find quite bizarre, actually. What was it about him when he changed his you know, he changed those around him decisively, conclusively, lopped their heads off. So there wasn't this sort of long-term loyalty to him. So with the ego Henry had, I wonder what he'd think about how he's remembered 500 years later. Right, I was thinking about this, right? If he hadn't have had 6 wives, so if he'd have married Catherine of Aragon, even 2, even married Anne, even 3, married Jane, would we really remember him? Because the 6 wives thing seems to be the hook that gets the interest. Oh, we did. Then he did. No, he did kill Anne. So, but he himself, what I'm trying to say is he himself, as a king, would he be a king that we spoke about? If you think, you know, talked about now, if he hadn't have had the queens, the number of queens he had, and he hadn't killed 2 of them, I don't think we'd be talking about him. What else did he do? I mean, he had the occasional and sporadic victories in France, and then he lost. Yeah, he didn't do anything, in my opinion. I don't know. Jenna says Henry would probably hate how we see him today, especially the fact that we all think he was overweight and nasty. Yeah. Sarah says he did give us our first crowned queen regnant. Indeed, he did. He did. I know there are. So I know from so maybe I'm not explaining myself very well, but from his actions, we got obviously the setting up of the Church of England, and yeah, of course, Mary and Edward, and obviously Elizabeth. But him in terms of a personal personal achievements. Well, he wasn't a Henry the Fifth. He wasn't a Henry VI in terms of Lottie says about setting up educational facilities. Barbara says I don't think he would have been a nondescript, unlike Elizabeth. Yeah, maybe would have just known him as Elizabeth's father, you know. And he is remembered. Lottie says, "Yep, he's remembered because of the queens." I think so. Otherwise, I don't know what else I don't know what. There's nothing in his actual kingship that wasn't as a reaction to him just wanting personal. What he wants personally. Everyone else had to suffer because of what he wanted personally. Imagenesis, for me, the memorable thing about him was the execution of his wives in order to move to the next one. But other than that, he was entirely nondescript and forgettable. To be fair, yes, that's what we shall conclude for today. Henry VIII really was entirely nondescript and forgettable. Oh, I think that would really get to him. If we can anyone get a note to him? Emma, possibly for the Field of Cloth of Gold, but nowhere as much as he is known due to his wives. Yeah, and I feel that again, like, is the Field of Cloth of Gold something we talk about more because of what happened afterwards? There was big summits that have happened. I mean, it was rather impressive, to be fair, wasn't it? But there were, there's other things that have happened like that throughout history. Other kings have done, and we don't talk about them. I think he's really benefited from the hook that is the king who had 6 wives, or as I heard one tourist once say, the king who killed all of his wives. Flo says, we just remember he was once handsome and then he got gout. Lottie Rose says, I have so many Lancaster York debates, but the one thing we can all agree on is that Henry VIII was entirely forgettable. Genesis, we can give him credit for some of the food we have today. I mean, he liked his food, didn't he? And was there a wheelchair before Henry VIII? He had a wheelchair, didn't he, to get him around once he got really painful legs and was too Sarah might know, because I wasn't at Hampton Court Palace. So Henry VIII, entirely forgettable. Oh. By the way, do you like my mug? I'm getting all patriotic, ready for the Queen's Jubilee. Amazing woman. Amazing woman. So the other place I went to this week, it's not Tudor, though. So you may or may not be interested, but I went to Chartwell, which is not far from Hever Castle. Genesis, he used a type of stair lift. Lottie, there probably was already one, but he just took the credit. Ah, dear. Chewing gums, maybe he's in part responsible for all the annoying food pictures we get on Instagram. Yeah, let's blame him for that. I'm up for that. So I will finish off by telling you about Chartwell just quickly. I don't think I've put a video up yet. I will do. It's Winston Churchill's home, and it's beautiful, but I tell you what, it's really homely. I'd move in if I got given the keys. And he, of course, was a prolific painter. He was a prolific painter, prolific writer. His books obviously were for publishing. His pictures were for personal use and really as a way to de-stress. So there's a studio there you can go into. I think he painted over 500 paintings. I know they're sort of dotted around the country, but a lot of them are at Chartwell. And Chartwell, basically after the I think it was after the Second World War, he decided he was going to move. We didn't re-elect him, and he decided he would go to the continent. If England didn't want him, he didn't want England, and he got really depressed. And one of his friends was a lord in the House of Lords. He was a newspaper baron, if you like. Probably not the right use of the word baron. And said, no, just hold on, don't make any rash decision. But Winston Churchill already had Chartwell up for sale. So his friend said, right, we're going to buy it off you, and then you can do what you like. You can move out whenever you want, but you are welcome to stay for as long as you want. And if you want to go at any point, you can go, but it is yours until you want to go. And so this sort of conglomerate, is that the right word? they all, a load of people got together and they all put in, oh, thank you, Doug, Lord Beaverbrook, they put in, I think it was £5,000 each at the time. And they raised enough money to buy the house and to leave a pot of money for the house's maintenance. And the idea being, or the agreement being, that once Churchill moved out, or the family moved out, because his wife, Clemmy, had could stay there, you know, if she outlived him, she did, that the house would go to the National Trust and this pot of money could be used to maintain the house. So it is now in the hands of the National Trust. But before Clemmy moved out, her and her daughter Mary, I think it was, because this was another one of the stipulations, interestingly, that the house would be reverted back to as it was in the 20s and 30s when they lived there. So they'd continued to live there, and of course the house would be adapted and different furniture and whatnot. But they put the house back to what it would have been like around the time of sort of running up to the Second World War. And it is honestly really homely. That sounds ridiculous. It's big. It's big, but it's not. I don't know. You can tell that it was a family home, and it's really beautiful. You can't take any photographs. Well, you can take photographs inside the house, but you're not allowed to share them commercially, which means I can't share them with you. So I took more of the outside and some videos of the outside. The grounds are really lovely. You can see how it would inspire him in his painting. And he has a studio, or had a studio as well, down in the grounds, where a lot of his I think I did put this on the other day, didn't I? A lot of his pictures are still in there, and his paint cabinet, and and there's an inscription on the paint cabinet, as in, you know, to keep his tubes of paint in, and there's an inscription at the top because it was given to him as a gift. So if anyone is ever going to Hever and you're looking at, well, there's lots actually else that you could do in the area, but if you're interested in Winston Churchill, then Chartwell, I would definitely recommend that you go and visit. And there were people, you know, I was chatting to while we were there, and they're saying this feels so much more not real, I suppose real, in that it's someone who has only just gone, and so that feel for them and that being their home is much stronger than you know, we struggle sometimes when we're somewhere which is 400 or 500 years old. That's why a lot of us I know like to go somewhere like that and like just sit still for a minute so you can sort of immerse it. But it's easy to feel immersed in the sort of 30s really in Chartwell, because it's still like it was at that time. So thoroughly recommend that that you go there. So everyone, I'm going to leave you to your day. If you want to support me, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Philippa. But you can also join my Patreon, where I give you something back for your money as well. I will be here next week at 1 o'clock, all being well. The week after, I am on tour. Don't know if I mentioned it. But so I'll probably do a more spontaneous live at some point. But follow me, and you can follow highlights of the tour on my Instagram and Facebook. So thank you ever so much, everybody. I hope you have a lovely day. I hope you enjoyed seeing me in higher definition on YouTube. I hope it worked. My new camera. And yeah, take care, everybody. If you're around tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I'll be on talking about Brockhampton Manor in a bit more detail. But for now, take care, everyone. I'll see you soon.